Our project is on the Harlem Hellfighters by Christian Lasecki and Walker Mathis. The 369th Infantry Regiment was constituted June 2, 1913 in the New York Army National Guard as the 15th New York Infantry Regiment. The 369th Infantry was organized on June 29, 1916 at New York City. The infantry was called into federal service on July 25, 1917 at Camp Whiteman in New York. While at Camp Whiteman, the 369th learned basic military practices. These basic practices included military courtesy, how to address officers, and how to salute. Along with these basic practices, they also learned how to stay low and how to sight during attacks, and how to stand guard and march in formation. After their training at Camp Whiteman, the 369th was called into active duty in New York. While in New York, the 369th was split into 3 battalions in which guarded rail lines, construction sites, and other camps throughout New York. Then on October 8, 1917, the regiment traveled to Camp Wadsworth in Spartanburg, South Carolina, where they received training in actual combat. Camp Wadsworth was set up in similar to French battles, while at Camp Wadsworth they experienced significant racism from the local communities and other units.
There was one incident in which 2 soldiers from the 15th Regiment, Lieutenant Europe and Noble Sissel, were refused by the owner of a shop when they attempted to buy a newspaper. Several soldiers from the White 27th Division came to aid their fellow soldiers. Lieutenant Europe had commanded them to leave before violence erupted. There were many other shops that refused to sell goods to the members of the 15th Regiment, so members of the 27th and 71st Divisions told the shop owners that if they did not serve black soldiers that they can close their stores and leave town. The white soldiers then stated, "They're our buddies, and we won't buy from men who treated them unfairly." The U.S. Army decided on April 8, 1918 to assign the unit to the French Army for the duration of the United States participation in the war. This regiment was assigned to French Army Command because many white American soldiers refused to perform combat duty with black soldiers. The men were issued French weapons, helmets, and brown leather belts and pouches. Although they continued to wear U.S. uniforms, while in the United States, the 369th Regiment was never treated like similar all-white units. They were subjected to intense racial discrimination and were looked down upon. The regiment suffered considerable harassment by both individual white American soldiers and even designation by the American Expeditionary Force headquarters, which went so far as to release the notorious pamphlet Secret Information Concerning Black American Troops, which warned French civilian authorities to alleged inferior nature, supposed racist tendencies, and African Americans. In France, the 369th was treated as if they were no different than any other French unit. The French did not show hatred towards them and did not racially segregate the unit. The 369th finally felt what it was like to be treated equally. The French accepted the all-black regiment with open arms and welcomed them to their country. The French were less concerned with race than the Americans and were short on troops.
The 369th Infantry Regiment was relieved on May 8, 1918, and went from assignment to the 185th Infantry Brigade and went into the trenches as part of the French 16th Division. It served continuously to July 3rd. The regiment returned to combat in the Second Battle of the Marne. The Harlem Hellfighters spent 191 days in combat.
That is more than any other American regiment, while only suffering 1,500 casualties throughout the war. On September 25, 1918, the French Fourth Army went on the offensive in conjunction with the American Drive and Meuse-Argonne. The 369th turned in a good account in heavy fighting, sustaining severe losses. They captured an important village of Hall. At one point, the 369th advanced farther than the French troops on their right and left flanks, and risked being cut off. By the time the regiment pulled back for reorganization, it had advanced 14 kilometers through severe German resistance.
It was mid-October. The regiment was moved to a quiet sector in the Vosges. It was there on November 11th, the day of armistice. 6 days later, the 369th made its last advance and on November 26th reached the banks of the River Rhine, the first Allied unit to reach it. The regiment was relieved on December 12, 1918, from assignment to the French 161st Division. It returned to the New York port of embarkation and was demobilized on February 28, 1919, at the Camp Upton and Yaffa, New York, and returned to the New York Army National Guard. 2 Medal of Honors and many distinguished service crosses were awarded to members of the regiment. The most celebrated man in the 369th was Private Henry Johnson, a former Albany, New York rail station porter who earned his nickname Black Death for his actions in combat in France. In May 1918, Johnson and Private Needman Roberts fought off a 24-man German patrol. Thought both were severely wounded. After they expended their ammo, Roberts used his rifle as a club, and Johnson battled with a bow and arrow. Reports suggested that Johnson killed at least 4 German soldiers and might have wounded 30 others. Usually, black achievements of valor went unnoticed, despite the fact over 100 men of the 369th were presented with American and French medals. Among those honors, Johnson was the first American to receive the Croix de la Guerre, awarded by the French government. This award signifies extraordinary valor. By the end of the war, 171 members of the 369th were awarded the Legion of the Honor of the Croix de Croix. The 369th carried the New York regimental flag overseas. The French government awarded the regiment the Croix de la Guerre with the Silver Star for taking Hall. It was pinned to the colors of General Leebuch at the ceremony in Germany, December 13, 1918. After the First World War, the regiment was spread out throughout New York, and it still maintained some military exercises. Then, with the start of the Second World War, they were recognized as the 369th Aircraft Artillery Regiment. Then were deployed to Hawaii and parts of the West Coast. They were one of the first units in the United States Armed Forces to have black officers. In addition to its all-black enlisted corps, the 369th compiled a war record equal to any other U.S. regiment. The 369th Infantry Regiment earned several unit citations along with many individual decorations for valor from the French government. The 369th Infantry Regiment was the first New York unit to return to the United States and was the first unit to march up Fifth Avenue from Washington Square Park Arch to their armory in Harlem. The 369th Infantry Unit was placed on the permanent list with other veteran units. In recapping the great story of the 369th Infantry Unit, Arthur W. Little, who had been a battalion commander in the First World War, wrote in the regimental history From Harlem to the Rhine that it was official the outfit was 191 days under fire, and they never lost a foot of ground or never had a man taken prisoner. On 2 occasions, men were captured but then recovered, but only once did it fail to take the objective, and that was due largely to burgling by the American headquarters support. So by the end of the 369th Infantry's campaign in World War I, they were present in Champagne, Marne, Meuse, and Argonne, and Champagne in 1918. All but 6 1918 campaigns in which they suffered nearly 1,500 casualties. The 369th also fought in distinguished battles such as Belleau Wood, Chateau Thierry. While fighting in these battles, they served nearly 6 months on the front line and earned many distinguished awards. These awards included the Croix de Guerre, which is the French military's highest honor. In conclusion, the Harlem Hellfighters were one of the most important and instrumental units ever in the war. Throughout their 6 months spent overseas, they never lost a foot of ground and they never lost a battle. That is why they are one of the most important units to ever fight in the war.